so much for inviting me to be a part of this interview.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I don't know, I feel like we've connected on this level before.
Well, we've known each other for like 20 years.
Just a few years. Yeah. Anyway, truly, congratulations on your 4th book.
I know.
Thank you. 6.5 of the other adventure series of do's and ahas for the 5-year-old kid to the adult who once was.
Who wrote that? It's amazing.
Right off the tongue.
So easy to say.
For those of you who don't know your story, know that you are writing, you're drawing, you are creating, you're doing cover art, illustrations, words, and you are self-publishing. So when did you start this? How did you get into it? And just tell us all about that.
So when I was a kid, idioms and adages, like that's the way the ball bounces, that's the way it crumbles. I didn't understand. Like, I mean, I understood them, but I was like, why can't people think of something that's more true to say, you know? and I remember asking myself, like, because what if the ball didn't bounce? I mean, what if the ball lived in a tree, you know, and a bird landed on its head? And so I was like, whoa, that'd be kind of a funny story. So I started writing these like 25 years ago, and always writing them in prose because I love rhyming, because every kid's book that I loved, you know, Dr. Seuss, my hero, rhymes and all that stuff. So I was doing these and didn't think much of it. And I let a client of mine at the time, when I was doing PR at Nestle, Trisha Bowles, read Inch. And for the next 18 years, okay, even when we weren't working together, even when we were in different cities and states and all that stuff, she would send me a text every year, a text, an email, a voicemail. How's Inch? Did you get it published yet? Where can I buy it? For 18 years, okay, she did this. And that's how much she believed in it. And I was like, you are crazy. And then eventually I was like, you know what, let me just, so I wrote 2 books, and then I started sharing it with friends. And it wasn't like, you know, because I'm in the music business, so people, you know, would be like, will you listen to my CD? And at the beginning, I used to like listen while they were in the same room. You know, where you're like, oh, you chose that. Yeah. So I stopped doing that. But so I would just give them and then, you know, walk away. But the feedback that I was getting was shocking. It was crying. It was emotional. People were engaged with it, and they were like, this has to be out there. People need to feel this and know this. And I thought, okay, well, let's do it. So in 2019, I published the first book, Why Ball Wouldn't Bounce. And all of a sudden, before I knew it, it was on bookauthority.org's. What they do is they quantify books. So they rank books based on social media, chatter, the positive reviews, how, you know, kind of, you know how things are going, not on sales, which is great. So all of a sudden I'm on the best new children's books to read in 2020 list. And then I end the year with being on the best children's books of all time list, next to Dr. Seuss and Shel Silverstein, like people that are my, and Jimmy Kimmel. And I was like, holy crap, like, maybe
That's
there's some,
awesome.
Yeah, and shocking, but great for an independent author, because it wasn't based on sales. Like, you didn't have to be a New York Times bestselling author. So I decided, okay, let's do this, and I named it the series 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, because I write it for 2 different audiences. One is the kid, right, but also the adult, because my goal with these books is to create a connection, a reason for a kid to be able to relate to an adult to be able to relate to a kid based on life experiences. So everything that's in that kid's book, because sometimes the adult's going to be reading it and sometimes the kid's going to be reading it, has to be endearing and understood by both parties, right? So and that's kind of the feedback that I've been getting too.
Nice. Well, I have to say, I mean, I was part of your initial group with the Why Ball Wouldn't Bounce, and it's just such an amazing story. So I can see why it was chosen and why the metrics on it took off the way that it did. So you're independently publishing your books. So that basically means if you want your books to stand out over the bajillion books available on Amazon, you have to make that happen, whether it's paying for marketing or trying to create a viral moment or however that is. what have you been able to do for each of your books? Do you have a secret? And for someone else who is also going down this path of independently producing and publishing, advice, suggestions, do's and don'ts? What do you care to share?
So I feel like use what you know and what you have. And I really have used my social media network to as a sounding board and focus groups, as like you said, Mandy. So when I've done anything from, do you like this title? Do you like the cover art? What do you think about this? Why do you buy children's books? I just put this out on social media. Why do you buy children's books? What prevents you from buying? They have been so great. And so every time that I launch a book, I'll send out like a invitation. Like, do you want to be a part of the launch ambassadors? And here's what they get. And people are so enthusiastic and helpful. And there's no way, absolutely no way I could sell one book without that support. And it has been made all the difference. You know, and word of mouth is so important. When you sell, when you make children's books, what I found is that people don't buy it unless they know you, know the author, and that could be like personally, or I know Dr. Seuss, right? Or someone has recommended it, like it, because, and I understand this too, right? You're giving your kids something, and it's gonna be a life lesson. So it better be legit, you know?
Right.
In that same token, I'm not selling a book unless I'm selling a book, right? And this is not my full-time job, so I couldn't be more grateful for the help that I get.
Well, and you talked about, you know, the series being inspired by idioms and adages, and we've all grown up hearing all of these things, but your twist on it is so unique. And I think that's what lends itself to, there really isn't anything out there that is really like this. So, you know, obviously you are hearing these, is that, you know, where does your inspiration come from to make that sort of the crux of how you start each of your books?
Some of the books, the 1, 2, and 4 started with the idiom or adage, and they're not stories that explain it, right? It's not a historical telling of it. It just ends with it, right? So the whole story builds up to inspiration from my family. I mean, the twins in this one are based on my mom and her identical twin sister. Finn the snail, who thinks, you know, it's like really fast and all that stuff, but is really slow. His name is Finn. And based on my grandpa, who my grandmother called Lightning because he was so slow. My Inch got a foot. Inch is based on my sister, who, you know, traveled internationally, and she was so fearless about it and really curious and all that stuff. So you know, the best inspiration is what's around you. We just have to be aware of what's around us and not just have it be part of the backdrop.
I love that. I love that. Well, you mentioned books 1 and 2. Let's talk about book 3, because you actually wrote it after talking to, and I would mispronounce it, Younga, I want to say the creator of Younga.
Kelly Lavelle,
Youth Empowerment Summit that took place at the United Nations. And it sounds to me like that was a unique experience for you, took you out of the way your process works, but seems to has clearly worked out well. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I met Kelly, who created this event a few years before, and I had helped her launch this unbelievable software called My Effect. And she's someone that is an influencer. You know, she is globally known, but also just such a supportive person. She's been on her own entrepreneurially, so, you know, stuff. So I've been sending her my books and all that stuff, and she said, look, I created this event. I would love a book that tells younger kids, like little kids, that you can change the world now, right? Like, you don't have to be an adult and all that stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I was grateful for the opportunity for sure, and the visibility, but I was like, oh, what do you mean I have a deadline now? You know, and this was like the first 2 books already had kind of the idea cooked up. So this was a brand new story. I had no idea how I was going to work in an idiom or an adage. I thought maybe I should just do this as a separate book. And so I had no idiom or adage attached to this book when I started reading it or writing it, because I wanted it to be about how, because kids today know there's a climate change problem. Adults do not yet. There's still a question of science to that. So I was educating the adults and also empowering the kids. And I had to have a story that they could both relate to And then at the end, there's a call for families getting together and making a commitment to do something.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah, but it was really challenging, and that deadline just loomed over my head.
Right. I've read books over and over and over again. And so what you talked about in that third book, where you're speaking to kids, but you're also speaking to the parents, and there's a shared message, because there are so many times, whether it's with kids music or kids programming, where the parents are just like, oh, give me a fork so I can shove it in my eye. This is painful.
Right.
But your books have them given the opportunity to connect, and without that piece, right? So being able to talk at the dinner table and have a conversation about the book that they read, or each of them getting something out of it, I think that is so special, because it must be challenging to write for two different audiences on a shared message, but letting them each come up to the conclusion that they know what they're supposed to do next at the same time.
Yes, and I get emails from people randomly. One woman said, we have discussions at our dinner table that we would never have had without your books. And she said, my husband, who has a hard time relating to connecting to my daughters, when we read Why Ball Wouldn't Bounce, all of a sudden he said, yeah, I didn't feel like I fit in either at school. And she goes, and we were all like, what the? And they had an hour conversation about that. And then another woman says, you mess up my face every time you release a new book. And I was like, what? And she talks about how she finds something that just connects with her. And Mandy, to be a rich, well-known author would be amazing, right? But it's equally as precious when I get those emails from random people. One woman said, you may think that you just write children's books, but let me tell you this, I didn't hunt down Dr. Seuss and Captain Kangaroo and thank them.
Oh, what a great accolade. Oh, that is really great.
And it's just
yeah. Oh, well, and you're making a difference. And that's the thing. You're putting something out there. People are reading it. You're inspiring people. You're inspiring family conversations, because maybe now these girls see their dad in a different light, see him as maybe, approachable on certain things where they didn't before. And maybe this is the thing that's going to allow me to connect to them. And what a gift to be able to offer. So,
well, and to see imagine seeing your parents as human beings when you're a kid, how much easier things would have been.
Sure. Yeah, because not all families have that. I mean, not all families have inside jokes. Not all families have those shared things that years later you say one word and it inspires giggles because you just grew up hearing that,
Right.
Maybe your next book. So, okay, let's talk about it. Speaking of, your latest release, your newest one is a little more ambitious and a little different than what you've been doing. It's larger than all the other books combined. You've got 50 pages with 70 original hand-drawn illustrations, new cover art. You're talking about whether it's gender biases, stereotypes, and expectations that we all have forced upon us or self-imposed, whatever that may be. And you tie it all back to squirrels. I love that. How did you come up with that? Were you nervous that the theme and some of those topics would be maybe not as embraced by the general population, if you will, and also translating that into schools, because parents and teachers might be teaching different things at homes than at school.
Patronized as a kid, and
right.
Those books that I felt were more adult were really, really impactful. Like Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim was a life changer for me, because the characters were, it might have been like talking cats or rats and mice, but you had this hero, you had a battle about society, and that was a game changer for me. And Harry Potter the same way. Really relevant characters that were doing these magical things. That's what I wanted to do. And so it would be irresponsible for me not to address gender bias, stereotypes, all that stuff in today's research on squirrels. And female squirrels are the hunters. So they're the ones who go out in the fall and gather and bury all the acorns for the winter.
Okay.
Guy squirrels just chase each other
It's
around.
identifiable, and it's educational because usually in traditional societies the men are the hunters and gatherers and the women are the preparers or whatnot, and so to learn that from just that lesson, but
Yes.
then also to put your spin on it and put the character details on it. I love that. No,
At the end of the day, though, it all comes down to the story. The story is the most important.
right.
And if people don't understand it, they can't follow it. And if there aren't characters that aren't relatable, forget it.
Right.
Anyone who has helped with this, anyone who has given a feedback, anyone who has given an insight or opinion, anyone who has purchased these books, anyone who has recommended them, who's left a review, thank you. I mean, it's impossible. It would be impossible to sell anything without this. And it just goes to show like what an engine it takes.
Yeah.
To bubble up. There's 38 million books that are being sold on Amazon, and so every time someone does something to support it is huge. This book, the dedication page is huge. But there's so many, and part of it is thanking people have helped, but also part of it is just making sure that people know that if you're a shiner, right? If you don't fit in a box, you're a hero to me, right? You have done things that people have never done before. You have shined a light on something. You have been both praised and shut down. So that list is very varied. I mean, it goes from pop icons to CEOs of huge companies to my nieces. I mean, lots of different people on there. Sure. But the reality is that they deserve to be thanked.
Do you have a favorite of the ones you've done? Do you have a personal favorite? I'm sure you love each of them for their own parts, but do you have one that you're either most proud of, or if someone were to say, which do you recommend for my first book?
I think the first one, Ball.
Mm-hmm. Which I've read and it's wonderful. It is so
and I was Ball. I mean, I was definitely Ball. I mean, that is a story about me. Okay, for sure.
Uh-huh.
And I think that really gets people. It's a connector for sure. People get it. Doesn't matter how old you are, you understand that. And then from a craft standpoint, probably this book now, the Shiny Shenanigans of Aunties and SQUIRREL, because it's it's an easy book but also complex, so you can make it whatever you want.
Okay, so where can people find your books other than hopping on the Google and Googling you?
Amazon worldwide. So it's Amazon.com in the United States, and then it's in Italy, Mexico, Australia, all over, India, all over.
That's amazing. International
author. Amazing.
Just amazing. I'm so proud of you.
Thank
So excited. You're speaking to the kids and to the parents. And so as a parent of a kiddo who, like I said, I read books to him all the time. Thank you for doing that, because parents appreciate that. When kids can learn and they can enjoy with them alongside.
Yes. Thank you. Mandy, I love you.
Yeah, me too.
Do you need anything else from me?
Maybe write a book about Traff.
I think Traff deserves a story, for sure.
Traff needs to be put out there.
Traff is underrated, and I don't think that it has gotten its due. Due.
It needs to be out in the ether.
I think
Traff needs to be released.
It should have been my number 2 book, though.
I don't know if you want it to stink. I don't know.
I know, it could stink.
The reviews will be on that one.
Sometimes it just goes silent. Sometimes